He's got 11 points in his own end, and I'm really getting too much offense in that state where a lot of people, Tyler Myers realistically is being defensive shutdown thing, but Tyler Myers being able to hit people, and he is a caller when he debuted 10 years ago. So there is a reputation. He is sort of different around the NHL than he is here in Vancouver. What the heck am I saying? When he gave up here on 650. He's a host on 650. He does the show every day, and he has himself. What he discusses is the idea of a Tyler Myers trade, and whether or not Myers trade value outside Vancouver is kind of akin to what Canucks fans believe it is. Now, a lot of people here in Vancouver would say that Tyler Myers is worth nothing because, sure, there is a certain level of value that this guy could provide, but is that noteworthy enough to deter you from the contract? No. That's what a lot of Canucks fans would like to go out there and say. But Seth Shaw on the program goes out there and he says something a little bit on the contrary. He says that because Meyer has been so good this year, the reputation is in a position where you could go out there and say maybe some other teams view him a lot more than they usually did. And the question comes up in Seth's monologue as to whether or not the right time to trade Tyler Myers would be before the trade deadline, or sometime in the offseason, or wait until Tyler Myers' contract is near its expiration date and then trade him as a prime time rental option for any other team that needs some size and needs some defensive efficiency. The problem with the last one, though, is that that timeline is in 2 years. Myers' contract expires in the 2024 season. So if you want to go out there and wait until this guy is expiring right then and trade him away as a rental so that any team that gets him can get full value out of what Myers brings while also not holding on to that contract, you have to wait 2 years. But Shaw is going out there and arguing that if that reputation is really starting to fix itself up now, if you want to go out there and say, okay, let's trade Myers for bare minimum, trade Myers for anything that is of negative value in this respect. Maybe not so much on player coming back with a whole bunch of money, but let's say a mid-late round pick, let's say a 6th, 7th, 5th round pick for Tyler Myers. You're not getting anything for this guy in return, but there's a price to pay because the team is going to be taking on that contract, which is not a good contract. Again, he's a good player, contract's not good. And so, when I start to think about the ideas as to what Rutherford could go on as Rutherford, I keep on saying Rutherford, dude. It's not Rutherford, it's Paul Bean. He's the GM. Rutherford is just pretty much the mentor to the GM, which kind of know what I mean, right? When you say that Rutherford is going out there trying to get prospects, trying to get picks, trying to alleviate the cap flexibility on this team, think of the cap space like your blood pressure. Sometimes the blood pressure is a little bit too high, and there's a reason for that. It means there's too much blood flowing, and the pressure of the blood cells pushing up against your veins is a little bit dangerous. That's kind of like the dollars within the Vancouver Canucks organization, and the veins that coagulate to make this team the way it is. And there's just way too much money rubbing up against the arteries right here in a way that doesn't really serve the team well. Like, okay, if the team is playing like Tampa Bay, it's fine to be a cap team. But this team's not playing like Tampa Bay. This team can barely hold a candle to the top contending teams in the NHL. Sure, they can get shots, but they don't convert. Like, they're second last in the Pacific now with a loss to Nashville. What else do you want now? So, this team is in the way it is, where it's not really a contender, yet it is still strapped up to the top. Rutherford, Castelli, they're going to go out there and they're going to make decisions. They're going to have to do this. And when it comes to trading away guys that are a lot more expensive than you would probably be able to afford should this team actually reach contender status, who knows if Myers is going to be the first one to go? And who knows if he even gets a player or a pick. Maybe the idea of another player coming back that isn't too expensive could be something you could think about, like a player that has 1 or 2 years left on a contract that is pretty beefy, so that the Vancouver Canucks can get rid of the Tyler Myers money sooner rather than later, because they don't have to wait a few years to do that. So there are some options here, and I honestly am kind of surprised to even hear this spoken about on the radio, because in my mind, I always kind of felt like Tyler Myers was sort of untradeable. Like, OEL is untradeable. pretty much because of the contract and because of the circumstances of that contract. It's so long, it's so old, and we all kind of knew that he only really wanted to go to 2 teams in the first place. Like, that modified no trade clause and all that, that's not new. Like, he had that in Arizona. He just wanted to come to either Vancouver or Boston, which is why we're pretty much going to be stuck with that until somebody decides to buy it out or the timeline just expires. But for Myers, there was always more of an idea that he had some form of that unmovable nature to his game as well. It's just now, hearing Dr. Shane radio, I mean, I like what he's saying. I really like the idea of Tyler Myers getting traded away for something that could not actually impact the Canucks monetarily wise long term, whether that's a 4th or a 5th or a 6th or anything. Like, I don't care, just get this guy off the roster if you have the opportunity. Why? Because the Canucks didn't really use all too much to acquire him anyway. He was a free agent pickup. He costs a whole bunch of money. He's not worth the money. Sure, he's a good defenseman, but like, you could get other defensemen at a cheaper dollar amounts. You try to get Travis Hamonic to do the same thing, and look at this guy. He's not even on the team. Like, he's seemingly everywhere all the time, except for Rogers Arena and wherever the Vancouver Canucks are playing. It's kind of weird. So, talking to Thomas, what do you think about Tyler Myers and the idea of trading this guy away? Do you think it's even remotely possible? That's your shot arguing that it could be, but of course we don't really know. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts. I'll leave a link in the description to the video. I'm not too sure if I'll leave a Reddit video link because it is on Reddit, and based off the format of the video, it looks like it is a video from Twitter, so I'll see if I can find that as well. But talk in the comments either way. What are your thoughts about Tyler Myers and the trade? Hope you enjoyed this video. Show us now. You know, it's kind of funny. Last time we spoke about this prospect, it was in a combined video with a few other prospects for Detroit. And 2 times before, when we spoke about this same guy, I made a thumbnail that was kind of akin to like a Jack and the Beanstalk kind of thing, because I was saying that this guy's a giant, and you know the story, right? And so, I don't know, we'll see if we go out there and do another sort of thematic fairy tale Jack and the Beanstalk P5O fun kind of thing for this video's thumbnail and title. But either way, I wanted to go over some more prospects. I said in the previous video, man, Brendan Hoffman news of Raiders and feeling like the prospects kind of new today. So let's go over one of the more underrated and more kind of surprising prospects, to be honest, that the Red Wings have in their system that is absolutely dominating the Swedish Hockey League at the moment. Now, if you know exactly who this is, you've seen this guy before in several instances. If you're watching Lucas Raymond a lot, you've probably seen this guy. If you're watching Simon Edvinsson a lot, you've probably seen this guy. If you're watching Raymond and or Edvinsson at either the Pro Level or the World Junior level, you've definitely seen this guy as well, because he's always just kind of there. Today we're going over Detroit's tree of a prospect himself, 6'8", 238 pounds as a right wing, left-handed player. This is the 2001 born 20-year-old Elmer Soderblom, taken in the 6th round of the 2019 NHL entry draft, 159th overall. Now, the reason why I say you're probably familiar with Soderblom if you've seen any of Raymond and or Edvinsson over the past few years, is because Soderblom was drafted out of the Pro Level junior system. He has spent his entire career since he was like 13, 14 years old, developing in Pro Level junior hockey program. He started out with the Pro Level Hockey Club U16 second division team in 2014-15, then moved up to the U16 third division team. He played in the regular U16 team, the J18 team, the second J18 team in the Super Elite, he was drafted in the 19 NHL entry draft because he had 17 points in 44 games. Now, that's not the best set of numbers in the world, but of course, there's a lot more to look at when you're talking about Elmer Soderblom and his point production. He's a monster. 6'8" is definitely something you cannot go out there and teach, and that's without speed. So this is a big dude right here. So Daniel Shaw at 2.0, and it was actually pretty great seeing him get drafted because immediately after he was drafted, hey, he went 18, 19, 20-year-old, which, I mean, that's not really too surprising. He was huge playing against other junior kids, so he went out there, did his thing, was phenomenal. Played in the FHL as well, where he did feel pointless. He also was pointless in the All-Svenskan stint that he had as well that year. But 2020, 2021 is really when we started to see more of Soderblom in a very positive light. Not only did he have 5 points in 28 SHL games for Frölunda, which was pretty good, he's 19 years old, suiting up in the top pro men's league in Sweden, but he played for the World Juniors on Team Sweden, and he had 3 points in 5 games played. 2 goals as well, and those 2 goals were both very nice goals and highlights for Ravens fans to watch, and they all kind of surprised everybody. Because one of the goals that he scored, Elmer Soderblom, was right in front of the opposing team's goaltender on the power play. Yeah, he's 6'8". They used him as a net front presence because, of course, they did. And Soderblom gets the pass, I believe it was from Lucas Raymond. And he goes out there and he goes through the legs to shove it in far side up high on the goal. Not only do we see the chemistry on display between Soderblom and Detroit's best prospect turned rookie right now in Lucas Raymond, actually no, it's not available because most sides don't exist, but we get the point. There was already some level of chemistry being built up with Raymond and Soderblom over there, not to mention the fact that Simon Edmondson is a defenseman on that same Frölunda team. So these guys are all kind of collaborating into the same mental picture for me. But this year, 2021, 2022, when you take a look at what Elmer Soderblom has done now that Raymond is gone from this team, it's nothing short of astounding. So far, in the 34-game sample that Soderblom has in the SHL, he's got 20 points, 14 goals, and 6 assists. And I don't really know how to articulate this in a proper way to drive the point home, but the goal production, going up to what it is right now, this guy had 3 goals in 28 games last year in the SHL. This year, sure, he's played 6 more games, but he's got 14 goals. How in the heck is this even possible? He's got a boatload more goals than he does assists, and it just appears that everything has gone right for Soderblom here in the SHL, so much to the point that he is indeed the top goal guy amongst U21 players in the league this year. Go over to the SHL, the overall goal production and point production of players in this league. Sure, while Soderblom is not there as one of the top point scorers because he only has 6 assists, he is in the top 10 of the league in total goals scored with 14. Now you go over onto U21 players and you see where that number is. He is a unanimous first overall. And it's kind of funny because second on the list has 9 goals. So then
if you're looking for help with your goal, there's one place to go. The answers to your goal and translated questions are waiting for you on Throw It to the Camera. Want to learn how to direct food and study your basement or talk to your voices, constant your first
Neil Heineman from the Calgary Flames system playing for Lexington. We go over to total points as well. Soderblom is the top U21 point producer in the SHL, with second overall being fellow Ravens prospect Albert Johansson playing for Farkestad on the blue line. We go over onto what Soderblom has done in terms of overall U21 goal scorers in the past 20 years. And you can see that his goal production right now is around the same as guys like Jesper Blomqvist, Carl Grundstrom, Samuel Tajamo, and Victor Olofsson. However, the games played is indeed a lot lower, so we're going to go ahead and do the math right here. Let's assume, because I'm looking at this chart, and I see a lot of 40, 50 game seasons out of these U21 players. Let's assume that Soderblom plays out of 44 games. He's got 14 goals in 34 games right now. 14 divided by 34, multiplied out by 44. He's on pace for 18 goals. Let's say he played 45 games. There you go. He's on pace for 19 goals, 18.5. If he gets 19 goals on the year, which he's on pace for in 45 games, he would have a better 20-year-old season than guys like Patrick Hornquist and Jakob Silfverberg in terms of goal production. Now, his assists would be a lot down there because Amsterdam only got 6 assists on the year, but that's still a really great number to see, and especially since the points per game number, he's got a 0.59 points per game right now. The range in which he's projected to finish in goal-wise is somewhat akin to his point production too, because Patrick Hornquist had a 0.57 points per game metric when he was 20 years old, and Hornquist became a pretty good NHL player. So right away, there's a statistical comparable here that makes a lot of sense, and honestly, kind of good to see, because, like I said, Hornquist was a good player. Silfverberg, great player. Andreas Johnson had his moments. Oscar Lindblom, sure, he had a lot worse moments in his career. Cancer is a pretty bad thing, but he's a pretty good player either way. And then you go up the list, of course, Patrick Hornquist as a 19-year-old was better than Hornquist as a 20-year-old. And Neil Bamstrom is doing this thing in Columbus, and Elias Pettersson is Elias Pettersson. To finish off this video, let's go over to an article here on the Malik Report, a Red Wings blog, roughly translating 20 questions with Elmer Soderblom via Ice Hockey Kids on Twitter. There's an entire Q&A section that goes over Soderblom and his entire progression and who he idolizes and all that. But I wanted to go over just a few of these answers here because it is kind of funny to just acknowledge the connections over here. The second question on this Q&A is, who is your most difficult opponent to play against in the NHL? Soderblom goes up there and he says last year it was Moritz Seider of Red Wings. He was the hardest guy to play. I'm often around the goal and in the corners, and I met him a lot there, and it was tough. So, right away, there's another connection right there. I don't really know if this was like contrived, like he said that because Seider is another Red Wings guy, but just being completely honest and saying, yeah, he's the toughest guy to play against, that's a great sign, isn't it? Especially considering all the awards that Seider had last year and all the star power that was behind his name. It definitely does make sense that even for a 6'8" giant like Elmer Soderblom, Seider was good enough, smart enough, quick enough, big enough to go out there and give him a difficult time. So, Jonathan Thomas, what do you think about Elmer Soderblom and his entire progression as a prospect here? The goal scoring numbers are fantastic. He's on pace to finish in the same goal rate as guys like Patrick Hornquist and Jakob Silfverberg and Andreas Johnson. A lot of good plays. I kind of feel like talking about prospects today. So we'll probably go out there and make a video about a prospect. Maybe the next one is going to be about a prospect too. There's a guy I want to talk about for the Red Wings faithful out there. But today's video is going over somebody on the Rangers. And when it comes to what exactly this team has done in the past year and a bit, it's absolutely incredible seeing how the New York Rangers have gone out there and performed. You take a look at the #1 goal scorer in the NHL, Chris freaking Kreider. Who expected this? The guy's out there with a 30-plus goal season, and we're just at the halfway mark of the year. It's the All-Star break. Kreider is the #1 guy in the league in goals. Take a look at Draisaitl, take a look at Ovi, take a look at McDavid. Not them, it's Kreider out here. You take a look at how well this team is doing on the score sheet. They are pretty much locked into the playoff race. Look, I mean, everybody kind of knows that the East and the entire playoff picture there is solidified already. So New York, hey, you're in it pretty much as long as you don't go on a big losing streak towards the end of the year. You're probably going to go out there and make it. Igor Shesterkin is doing his thing. Adam Fox is going out there doing his thing. Aaron Zibanejad, you have yourselves the young guys, Lafreniere and Kako are doing better than people thought they would have. So it's pretty good in New York right now. But when you go over to the prospect side of things, what if I told you that the 2021 NHL entry draft had itself a really big bet that the Rangers made that is paying off tenfold right now? Let's go over the very first draft pick that new Rangers GM Chris Drury ended up making under this new regime, and it starts in the first round, 16th overall. Now, the Rangers in this position had themselves a bowl of guys to choose from, mostly because the 2021 draft went in a very strange fashion, especially towards the beginning picks over here. You have guys like Tyler Boucher going a lot higher. You have guys like Isaac Rosen going a lot higher than people thought they would. And as a result, at 16, the Rangers have guys to choose from that a lot of people thought could have been earlier picks. Chaz Lucius was the guy that was available from the NTDP. You had the goaltender against the Wallstead. You had Fabian Mussel. There were a few guys out here that probably could have gone a lot earlier that were available to New York. And they ended up selecting a guy that a lot of people were sort of surprised about. With their 16th overall pick, the New York Rangers selected from the Flick Firebirds of the OHL as well as EHC Olsen in the Swiss League, Brennan Othmann. Now, Othmann, to his credit, was not the biggest reach in the world. You take a look at where he was ready to go. TSN and Bomberton had him at 16. Craig Button had him at 17. IFS had him at 18. So that's directly in the range where he did go, which was 16th to the Rangers. However, McKean and future considerations both had him at 22nd overall, which was a bit lower. Brennan Othmann, to me, was always the guy that I was kind of having on my radar because he was part of that Don Mills Flyers U16 AAA team in the Greater Toronto Hockey League back when Shane Wright and Grant Clark were over there doing their thing and absolutely torching the Ontario scene. Afterwards, though, Brennan Othmann made his way over to the Flick Firebirds and eventually played his draft year in the Swiss League, where he was a pretty notable player. He was also really great at the U18s, where he went out there and scored some very good goals. But when I talk about the Rangers and goal scoring, you want to talk about Chris Kreider and him being an absolute stud in terms of NHL goal scoring? Hey, guess what? Brennan Othmann is going out there doing his own thing when it comes to OHL goal scoring. In his draft season, he was a pretty okay player with 16 points in 34 games played in the Pro Men's League in Switzerland. Okay, that's cool. But with Brennan Othmann going back over to the OHL and playing against peers in his own age group, take a look at the production he has had this year. In 37 games played, Brennan Othmann has gone out there with 30 goals, 26 assists, and 56 total points. He has more points this year than he had games played 2 years ago. And you take a look at the point production he had 2 years ago, 33 points in 55 games played as a rookie in the OHL. He almost has as many goals as he has points 2 years ago, and he's doing this in 18 fewer games played. He is the captain of the Firebirds, and believe me, the Firebirds have not been the best team in the OHL the past few years. They've had some very bad growing pains over the years, and it's been pretty difficult to watch. But just seeing Brennan Othmann going out there and doing his thing, carrying this Firebirds team in the ways that he has, hey, you take a look at where they are in the standings, and they're second in the West Division right now. Very great to see for Flint, especially because of the lack of success they've had over the past few years. But we also take a look at the OHL as a whole, and Brennan Othmann is the #1 goal scorer in this league. Now, in terms of points, he is out there 6. He is behind Matthew Petrov, Lucas Edmonds, Wyatt Johnson, Brendan Coe, and Roy Carrier. But when it comes to that goal scoring touch, hey, he is indeed the #1 guy. And when it comes to player that are below him, James Hardy has 29 goals in 40 games. Kai Cartier has it in 39. Cairns has 26 goals in 40 games. Coe 26 in 41. The only player that's actually out here challenging Brennan Othmann for the best goal scorer in the league title is Luca Vandalista. He is a London Knights guy, Nashville Predators prospect. He's got 26 goals in 28 games. So, yeah, games played is severely in Evangelista's favor. But Othmann still is out there with the lead. And so when you take a look at this bet and how it really is paying off for the Rangers, what they have here is a guy in Austin who has absolutely come into his own when it comes to sniping pucks and being just an absolute bulldog. We made a one video talking about Brendan Austin and the entire profile page dinner, so you can go ahead and watch that video if you want to go ahead and get a bigger look at this player. But we kind of focused mostly on his performance in Switzerland because, of course, you know, he was drafted out of the Swiss League technically. There was no OHL hockey last year, so we had to go off of how he was playing at international tournaments, the U18s, as well as his EHC Fulton stint in the Pro Swiss League. But now, he's been playing against other kids his age in a Canadian Hockey League once again. It's been an absolute treat, and I think a lot of people, myself included, are super surprised to see the goal-scoring touch really show itself off in more ways than one, and to a greater extent than we believed was possible when he was drafted last year in the 2021 draft. And so now he's really playing like that first-round 60th overall caliber guy, and if he goes out there and really proceeds with that goal-scoring and consistently is able to get more and more goals, the sky is really the limit here when it comes to Brendan Austin and his shooting ability, his shot on the rush, his ability to pick off corners, his really fancy way to score once in a while. If you watched the U18s last year, you would have remembered that this guy had some very nice nights at some very key opportune times. And because of how he's been performing so far in the OHL, I wouldn't be surprised if he went out there and actually made the World Junior team, because earlier on in January, he didn't make the initial Team Canada, and that was seen as a shock to a lot of people. But when the World Juniors come back in, August or whatever it is, you have yourself the ability to actually change the roster. You don't have to go out there and lock in the same guys that you had in January. And so with a brand new World Junior selection process going to be underway, it's going to be awesome to see other guys go out there like Brendan Austin, maybe get themselves a chance at cracking the team when they initially didn't. And it's not a fault of his own as to why they didn't crack the team in the first place. A lot of people would go out there and say the Team Canada was very weird when they made their selection back in December, January, etc. But now there is a chance to go out there and correct that and get the top goal scorer in the OHL. New York Rangers prospect that a lot of people were sort of, concerned with when they made the pick. I got a lot of comments in that Y1 video back when the draft happened from Rangers fans saying, okay, we'll see how this pick goes. I'm not really too sure how it's going to work out here, but if there is going to be a lot to talk about it, we'll go out there and we'll believe in it. But hey, guess what? It's been roughly just less than a year since the draft, and this player has gone out there and really impressed in the best way possible. So, New York Rangers fans, you guys got Kreider in the NHL scoring goals like crazy. If you're an OHL fan, you guys got Brendan Austin there scoring goals like crazy and giving you something to cheer about. So talk in the comments what do you think about Brendan Austin and his entire profile as a prospect. What do you think about his future? Where do you think he lines up in your roster? He is a left wing, so there is some concern there. I mean, you do have a few good left wingers on your team already. Where does Austin slot in? Talk in the comments what your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this Pretty Charles 99. And bye.